So I don't want to do my segue yet. I don't want to do it yet. So what else should we talk about? But it's kind of crazy how it's become a thing, though.
Segways?
Yeah, I can see you being a bit like, sometimes your mind just kind of stops and go like, wait, what?
So, Jaco. He literally was on.
Yes. Yeah, that was a great conversation, actually. That was a great conversation. I mean, it's not that you have a conversation with him more so than him having a conversation at you.
Yeah. While playing techno music. No, but I mean, this was a fucking fantastic show.
Yeah.
With Jaco, and I can tell you, folks, we are only getting started with this. So we obviously pushed some of the bangers out immediately, Uri and Jaco.
We have some others.
But it will keep on what? Banging? We're probably that
coming from you.
We will keep on presenting some insanely awesome folks. Really looking forward to that.
You know, there's this saying when the competition is making a mistake, don't get in the way. That was kind of the moment we were having. It's just like,
Sure.
you know, I'm just going to lean back and enjoy this moment.
Yeah.
But you are right. I think this is a really nice facet to the show, not just you and I sitting in our little bubble. Also hearing perspective
What do
from
you mean?
others.
What do you have against me?
Nothing at all.
Okay.
Boss,
Yeah.
I respect you and admire you. No.
Paycheck provider.
But anyway, so that's been cool. We're going to do more of that. We probably have at least, I will say, about a couple of months booked already,
Yep.
which is cool. And it's just going to get crazier and crazier. Like I said, at some point, maybe we'll get Mark Benioff on the show.
Yep.
But anyway, speaking of having guests on, the other day we were setting up the studio for guests, and you might not have noticed, but there's a lot of sand on the floor over here. We basically have this massive light. It's called like a light dome, so you can check it out on YouTube. But to make sure it doesn't fall over, we literally have bags with sand holding it out. Yeah, now you're looking for the sand. But there was a leak in one of the bags. This is no joke. There is sand on the floor. This is not a setup for the Segway. It's not, but there was leakage. And I just
So, Mikkel, what I would like to understand, why are you going out and punching holes into sandbags just to make a point?
Someone had put it on upside down, so apparently then it couldn't contain the sand. But, you know, it's a great segue because we're going to talk about revenue leakage.
Yeah.
And it's all the rave, at least sometimes on LinkedIn. I see it quite frequently pop up.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, what is it? Can you tell us what is revenue leakage?
So it has to do with the sandbag.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you.
So let's just say traditionally, revenue leakage is seen as a finance term, and really revenue in the sense of, you know, the actual revenue, recognized revenue, not ARR stuff that we're sometimes talking about. But in this case, traditionally, this is about you have booked a deal, a contract is signed, you are sending out invoices in order to collect that cash, and then you're collecting that cash. Those three numbers should be the exact same. What happens in a lot of cases is that those numbers aren't the same, that you don't actually invoice what you've booked and they don't collect what you've invoiced, right? And in finance terms, this is why E&Y, so Ernst & Young, and BCG actually did some research around this. But this is what has previously been referred to as revenue leakage. And this is now getting a little bit expanded, right? So because it's not only, you know, what you've booked and invoiced and then collected, it actually goes further out the funnel into both directions of the bow tie, if you will.
So it's kind of the opposite of me telling my wife I'm going to go shopping for hunting equipment. I'm only going to spend a couple of thousand and come back with, okay, great, good. So what I was wondering is, how big is this issue actually? How big of a problem is it?
Yeah. So E&Y, they are saying that, and we're talking actual companies, not 10 million SaaS, we're growing really fast. No, like real companies see between 1 to 5 percent points on the EBITDA. You know, for everyone, that means profit. That's money that you're actually making.
It's something we need to know now.
Yeah. And BCG estimates that annually $2 trillion literally leaking away. Yeah. So this is a major problem. It's a pretty big thing.
Yeah.
And then one of our favorite vendors in the space, Clary, actually did some research, and I'm sure they used like a Forrester or like a Gartner. And they actually found that north of 14% of your ARR is can be identified as revenue leakage, meaning you could have grown 14% more year over year if you had solved all the revenue leakage issues that might exist in your pipeline and so forth.
Yeah. So it's, I guess, super relevant these days with everything that's happening to maybe look a bit at whether there's some leakage happening at your business.
Yeah, for sure. And the funny thing is, right, when you think about where E&Y and BCG start, and you just visualize the bow tie in front of you. Where they start is really very much in the middle, where the bow tie has the little knot, so to speak.
This is a great episode.
Yeah, I know. That's a $2 trillion problem right there.
Yeah.
Then Clary, which are basically doing pipeline management, forecasting, both new biz, existing biz, putting this at 15% roughly. But if you really go all the way out, meeting booking, leads, calls, emails, everything that's happening, renewals, signals, activation, implementation done, pre-sales, post-sales. If you look at all of those different pieces, I think we will need to ask Gartner and Forrester to look at that and tell us how much percentage that would be. But if the core of the bow tie is 2 trillion, then looking at the full thing end to end, you can only guess what that number would be. So examples that come to mind is obviously this whole CPQ space, if you will, right? You sign a deal, you invoice it, you get the deal. Sure, this should be systemized, it shouldn't be Excel and all of that stuff. I think forecasting vendors then are pushing the problem a little bit further out, and then becomes deals are slipping, they're over forecasted, pipeline management isn't in place, you're spending time on the wrong deals, that kind of stuff. And really kind of going further out than that though, which is really, all your different conversion rates throughout the funnel, not just opportunity open to close, but everything that happens before, which is even more so a problem for non-enterprise B2B SaaS, everything from mid-market down, B2C, kind of the whole thing, right? And then you have things around sales engagement, how many calls, how many this, is in the right industry, are they booking the right amount, are the handovers working well, is performance management in place, on the marketing side, and which channels do we deploy cash, what are we bidding on, what is coming through, what is working, what is not working, is the demo request form up?
It's up, Tony, it's working, I'm telling you. So basically the entire revenue architecture,
and
all the moving parts
then go
within.
to the other side, right? Are the activations for the customers on track? Are the implementations on track? Do we have enough people to cover pre-sales? Do we have enough people to cover our customer base? Like all of that stuff, right? This is just adding to this leakage problem really that exists. Right. Those, let's just say some of those aren't solved yet that well. We're gonna peel the onion a little bit back and say, hey, this you can solve like this you can solve like that. But this is really, when you think about examples for this issue, it's really broad, right? And again, I really hope all the people listening here don't have that problem, but chances are you totally have. Like there's very little way around this. And again, right? So 15% of your revenue, you yourself can decide, is this a big problem that I'm having, or is it not a big problem, right? But really kind of there's almost 1,000 different examples here. And some of them might apply more to SMB folks, to enterprise folks, to B2C folks, to kind of the whole spectrum. But there are lots of those examples out there.
So aren't there, we talked a bit about it obviously beforehand, but aren't there any solutions really that help with this stuff today?
So again, right, for the CPQ stuff, you can buy CPQ software. For your forecasting, you can buy forecasting software. For the rest of the bow tie, I think no. I mean, this is where we maybe kind of do the Growblocks plug and everything, but I don't think there's anything out there that actually tries and help you spot and prevent revenue leakage across your full funnel, across your bow tie. I don't think that exists right now. No.
Okay. So if you're bought into the problem, you're sitting in revenue operations and think, okay, so revenue leakage, there's a lot of potential money there that we want to go now and salvage, protect, proof, whatever. How do we go about it? How do we fix it? Because it's, it seems kind of elusive. It's anything within your revenue architecture. Revenue, you kind of put it the other day when we were talking, it's like revenue you are owed. Yeah. Kind of, right? So how do you go about it? How should you think about it if you're revenue operations?
So I think I would try and split it apart into 3 different areas. One could be obviously revenue itself. Yeah, your revenue engine and the revenue generating process. One could be costs, basically kind of the resources you need to spend in order to generate that revenue. And if you're able to cut some of the cost away, that means you can take that money and put it into revenue generating, more revenue generating roles. And then the last one, basically taking the engine even further apart and looking how long some of these steps take. Yeah. And obviously realizing that time is both resource consuming, but it's also revenue delaying. Yeah. Right. So I would kind of, I would suggest to look at those 3 areas independently. And I think there are also different ways to take them and try and fix them. Right. Yeah. Let me maybe start with time as an example, and we have someone that's going to be in the special episode
this week.
Yeah.
So we have so many guests.
I don't want to take too much away from that, but so he is a pretty fantastic guy, working with lots of different portfolio companies, and he actually kind of told us a story about one of them. And please listen to the episode. Much more golden nuggets in there than this year. But he was basically talking about was either a legal or procurement process, something like that. And basically this took for them 6 weeks. And had lots of people, 7 people working on this, right? Yeah. Because they're in parallel, they had to kind of, work through those deals together. And he applied lean. So lean, the lean methodology to the process, ran a workshop, blah, 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 all really, really interesting. And basically then was able to break it down, I think, to 1 week. Yeah. And then obviously was able to do that job instead of with 7 folks, with 2 or 3, something like that. And
so they basically congratulated the team and saying, "Hey, now we can let 5 of you go." No, just kidding.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that corner is sometimes hard to make in the end, but in a more objective world, that basically means those 4 resources, which were highly paid resources, by the way, they can now be used for other purposes. Yes. Right. And again, it has 2 impacts here. One is really on the cost side, obviously, but the other one is really on the time side. Suddenly, it even became a competitive advantage for them to be able to turn around an offer and this piece so quickly for a potential customer, and go from, hey, this is the vendor of choice to here's signature, basically, right? And those 2 things in combination are extremely powerful. And yes, this is 1000% revenue leakage right there. Right?
So actually, that's not the guy. I messed up. It's not the guy going out this week, but it'll come. There's another cool guy. So just FYI.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Next.
Wow. Yeah. So then we have another guy.
We have another guy.
No. So this was you need to figure out how you want to cut this.
Yeah, this is going to be terrible.
So this was a time example. And I think those kind of analysis, you won't do every day. This is those, you look at the whole thing, you single out what's not working, and then you try and break it down and speed it up, right? And you can use all kinds of different methodologies in order to achieve this. But that will be an on project basis kind of thing. Yeah. This will not be ongoing.
And I think we even talked about for example, with stuff like ramp time, it's just a major efficiency driver. People don't see that often. And that is, again, there's a lot of revenue being left on the table when it comes to time, whether it's ramp time or turnover time, on deal sales cycle length, right? So it is a massive competitive advantage for sure.
Moving on to the next one, which is cost. And this can be as simple as, actually, we only need that CSM 1 month later. Yeah. And by the way, as revenue ops, as CRO, every time you find something like that, that's literally $5,000 in your pocket, right? This could be 5 more opportunities, could be, whatever. So this can be pushed out, sometimes, or it might be, other things. Hey, we actually have enough quota coverage. We don't need that AE yet. It could be you had a super aggressive plan for the year, and as you walk through it, you realize, shit, we're not hitting the plan. That does also mean we actually don't need those folks, right? So this can be one way of kind of thinking about costs in the sense. Another example here is really from, Chris Walker, and he's been talking about this a lot, through his channels. You should totally follow the guy, by the way. And one of his ongoing and, super key examples is this obsession of people with MQLs. And let's get more MQLs. Let's buy more MQLs. We have an MQL target and we need to hit the MQL target, right? And what people obviously do in order to achieve that is they get more and more creative in how to get to that MQL target. Really what that means is they're buying shittier and shittier MQLs, right? The quality of that is decreasing. Sometimes referred to this as webinar leads or white paper leads, which in and of themselves is not a bad thing. It's just what you do with them then, right? And that actually goes to his point. He then talks about, what many people are doing is someone signed up for this webinar and then they get a call the next day from this SDR. And they not only get one call, they get plenty of calls. And obviously the conversion rate of those MQLs will be pretty terrible because no one is ready to buy. It's like, hey, I just wanted to watch this thing, and now you're in my inbox all day long. Yes, you call those 100 or 1,000 leads and you get maybe 1 or 2 deals out of them. And then guess what? You give those deals then to the AE team and they process that stuff and nothing comes out of that either. So yes, you might have been able to drive down your MQL cost. You still accumulated a lot of money that didn't drive any valuable MQLs. But that's actually not it. The downstream cost is also pretty significant. You now spend those SDR hours on going through those MQLs, and then you wasted AE's hours to go through those MQLs. And if you were to visualize this as a funnel, that whole chunk of the funnel that is not only MQLs to ops to one, but also the cost associated to that in terms of ad spend, in terms of SDRs, in terms of AEs, you could have basically saved all of that cash and redeployed it either nowhere. In the current time, it could go nowhere, by the way, or you would have redeployed it into other tactics, other strategies, rather than this MQL buying bullshit. And again, this is one way how you can spot and prevent revenue leakage, right? Because it really once you take that money and redeploy it somewhere else, that's really where you then realize, okay, wait a minute, I could have taken this, and very easily, this is $1 million, by the way, very easily. You could have taken this and put it into other tactics, other strategies, and that then with your usual CAC payback, not with this diluted CAC payback, but with your usual CAC payback, could have resulted in everything between $500K to $1.5 million additional revenue, that year or for that time period. And this is basically, the opposite of running a tight ship and running a precise business. This is allowing revenue leakage to happen. And this is, again, right, a thing that you could have done, should have done, that, to a degree you were owed, but you failed to, right? So this is kind of a cost way of thinking about revenue leakage.
It's funny, like, it's such a powerful thing to you're basically finding money that are just being burned that you can use for acquiring customers elsewhere. And I remember we had the same. We implemented a tool that enabled us to see the efficiency of our paid channels, and we basically saw that a channel we were spending a 6-digit amount on quarterly was just returning nothing, nada. We could take that money and redeploy it to a way more efficient channel. And that is really just to make the case a little bit more real, one of those
Yeah.
those examples.
No, exactly. And we can go further into the marketing world and this stuff, but it's it really just is one example.
Yeah,
right?
it happens everywhere.
It's you could take it and say like, hey, the SDRs are calling into this industry and it's just not converting, neither for the SDRs, nor for the AEs, nor for the customer side. Maybe we should take this money and move that somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
There's so many ways where you can say like, hey, we're not doing the right things. We should reallocate or redeploy or refocus those resources.
Yeah.
And that, to a degree is cost creep or revenue leakage that's happening there, right? So we covered time, we covered cost. Let's go to the revenue engine itself. And here I have like one example of someone in a 150 million business. And this was really, again, marketing team, but this is like a RevOps example. It's all the issues always with marketing, Mikkel. And basically, a product team was pushing out a new product, but the way it was bundled and sold was in a way where you could only buy it in combination with another part of that offering, right? Marketing didn't know that, or maybe we did know and just chose to not know it, as marketing does. And they started bidding fairly aggressively on keywords surrounding that product.
Yeah.
Makes kind of total sense. But obviously then people signing up and then running through a demo realized, oh, wait a minute, I can't get this without also buying this other thing that I actually really don't want. And suddenly conversion rates dropped off a cliff. Marketing wakes up one morning, looks at those conversion rates, and it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What is, these sales guys?
Yeah,
Lazy sales guys, they're not picking up fast enough, yada, yada, yada. Why are conversion rates tanking? This is messing with the whole model. We would need to have more MQLs or whatever. What is going on, sales? And then obviously this, guy came in to his RevOps leader there to check what's going on, and he realized after quite some digging, and we're not talking like one Excel report and that's what it is. No, it's quite some digging, figuring out that oh, wait a minute, these guys bid on this set of keywords aggressively in order to acquire those MQLs that then didn't convert. That is actually what the problem is, right? This logically doesn't make sense. They stopped that, see their conversion rates bounce back to where they used to be. And this was kind of a, you didn't fully quantify it, but we're talking like $500,000 million loss. I mean, this is a big organization, right? Yeah. Just because of this thing happening and not being seen. And this is one of those things where you monitor a conversion rate, it drops, and then you investigate, and then you maybe find, and so forth. And think about how much money was ticking out of this organization per day.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second. And then you can, this is just one example.
Yeah.
For like a company that is 150 million. That happened there, and that is kind of in the revenue realm, if you will.
Yeah. It's basically the equivalent of setting a very expensive car on fire and just watching the flames. This is the equivalent. I don't know why I'm so dark today, by the way. It's crazy.
I don't know. It's a Danish thing.
But so anyway, so you're saying cost, time, revenue. Those are the three elements you kind of need to look at as RevOps.
Yeah.
But how in practice is that going to work out?
So I think the time piece, you know what? Look at the funnel, look at all the different things, and look at the stuff that takes really long time and then investigate and try and improve it. This can be things that are general sales cycle topics.
Yeah.
This can be things like onboarding topics. We referred sometimes to this book, What Unicorns Know. There's like an example of Gainsight. They were able to cut this down by quite a lot. And look for those things that take a lot of time, because that would also then mean lots of resources being deployed, lots of time wasted.
Yeah.
And that might be a great spot to jump in, right? Obviously, you might have some things where you have lots of conversions happening even in split seconds, and there's something there that process-wise isn't working out. But ideally, you wanna have some kind of an idea what the revenue impact of this is, right? Because every time aspect you can price in to a degree, right? But this could be an analysis
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? Don't get me wrong. This is with thinking and looking at stuff and scratching your chin. This is how you can get there. I think on the cost side, this will require a little bit more digging and actually understanding of your whole revenue engine, right? This is, I think, where Chris Walker is so successful with that story and that message, because it's not obvious. And many people are doing it. It's kind of a very much a given practice. But as you inspect your funnel, you might find those things, right? So we've talked about this many times. Do a CAC payback analysis based on the different channels. Do it based on the different channels and regions and whatever. Slice and dice your whole thing. Understand what's working well, what's not working well. Once you figure out what's not working well, figure out why it isn't working well.
Yeah.
And then either fix it or redeploy cash, right? So this is what you can do, and you should be doing this as much as you can, but surely on an annual, quarterly kind of basis, definitely. And then in a case like this, where you literally hiring and rehiring people, firing and rehiring people, this is a strategic thing, right? And that's why also this is one of those examples where you use revenue operations can have a massive strategic impact, right?
Yeah.
I think on the revenue thing, it's I think it's less so obvious what the solution is.
Yeah.
We don't want to go too right hooky and say, hey, grow blocks, but yes, kind of we're building in that direction. We have built quite some stuff around it. What I wanted to kind of to break apart kind of how we're thinking about these different revenue pieces. But basically you have when you look at your whole data stack, and we're talking everything CRM and your gain side and your Marketo, but also your Gong and your Sales Loft and your Google Analytics and whatever. You have so much data floating around, right?
Yeah.
If you take the whole piece together, what you will find is only 5 maybe 10% is fully structured and trustworthy, right? That's why data quality is always such a big issue. Everyone is talking about, oh, my data is shit.
Yeah.
And as we talked in other episodes, well, not 100% of your data needs to be good and to get value out of it.
Yeah.
What we're seeing with most of our customers, 5 to 10% typically is what people are actually kind of okay with. And that might be aggregates, or it might be other ways of accumulating the data instead of every single piece of data point, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the 95%, which is basically everything else.
Yeah.
And the way we're actually thinking about this is the structured data. This is stuff that you should be looking at from a monitoring perspective. Yeah, which means you should be setting targets for how they should perform, and you should be monitoring them daily.
Yeah.
In some cases, maybe it doesn't make sense daily. I totally agree with that. But generally, your cadence should be daily around that stuff.
Yeah.
And then you will see what's going well, what's not going well, right? We talked about this a lot. You need to have a bit of a model behind it. You need to have a direction for that data, right? Because if your leads are flat, that's not good.
Yeah.
It needs to have a direction towards your revenue target, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not trending towards that, it needs to go red, right? So this is the monitoring piece around that. Number two, this is maturity level 1. I just say it like that. Maturity level 2 is really to go from, hey, here are the top level pieces, and we're looking at them in a regular fashion. You actually want to break them down and down and down and down, right? You want to get out of those 5 to 10% data. You want to squeeze all the juice you can get out of those, which really means combining different dimensions, breaking into additional dimensions, adding different steps and so forth. That gets really complicated really fast, because you also want to have an expectation for each of these different steps, for each of the month, for each of the dimensions and so forth. Right, and I think maturity level 1 and 2, I think this is something that, so 1, you can do with Excel, period, and BI. 2, you will need a tool like Roblox in order to kind of reach that maturity level. And then really the next step is something that we are referring to sometimes as revenue observability. So when you Google observability right now, so what you will find is folks like PagerDuty, Datadog. We're talking like, billion-dollar revenue
massive
companies, right? And they're like 10 years old or something like this.
Yeah.
And what they've been doing, for the longest time, and probably for quite a lot longer, is basically creating observability tooling for developers. Yeah, to say like, okay, listen, you have all of those servers, you have all of those tools, you have all of those data streams, load time, whatever, telemetry, whatever words come to mind that no one understands. But that's what they're basically, observing.
Yeah.
Without anyone in the organization having set necessarily a target for it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all the stuff that's so under the hood. So from a revenue perspective, we would call it the 95%.
Yeah.
Where you can't trust it, you don't know really what's going on, but when something is suddenly spiking, you be like, that's probably not good.
Yeah.
Right? And those companies basically deploy that for your software stack, and then ping you like, boom, hey, here's something off. We don't really know why. We don't really know how bad the problem is, but you should probably look at this, right?
It's like go into the kitchen.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah. That same stuff you actually also want to have for your revenue engine, which is something that, we as Growblocks building towards, right?
Yeah.
You wanna be able to understand and see where are things going wrong that you didn't even think about, thinking of, basically, right? It's the unaware stuff. And you want to have that lifted up, quite quickly for you. Those are I think the three main buckets. And everyone on this planet is in bucket 1, by the way. Then there are very, very few in bucket 2.
And that's some.
And then there's no one in bucket 3, right?
Yeah.
Bucket 3 simply doesn't exist yet. I think this is how that problem kind of breaks down.
And I can tell you just, my experience going from getting the first dashboard from revenue operations to then the second, going like from level 1 to level 2 is a massive difference. Massive difference. Like, sure, when you go to level 1, probably you're just going from let's say a spreadsheet, honestly, to BI. And it was just very shallow. You couldn't do anything. It's like you're getting asked, well, why are we behind on opportunities from marketing? It's like, I don't know. I don't have the answer here. You see the same as me, right? But then when you went to level 2, that's when you started getting dimensions and filters and even additional tools to provide more data, such as attribution, right? Yeah. And that's when you can start making smarter decision. And I just wonder if you go from using, let's say, 5% to 10% of your data to using all of it, what kind of crazy things are you going to start to find?
And suddenly these 15% doesn't seem like such a crazy number anymore, right?
No, exactly.
Right?
No,
it's like, I can see 15% across the bow tie. I can totally see that stuff that I'm, if you think about this iceberg, analogy, the 5% is not even the tip of the iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg. And then you have the rest of the iceberg that sticks out the water, and then you have all the rest that is below, right? And I think this is where when you think about manufacturing, building machines, that's where they have been for the last 20, 30, 40 years. I don't know, right? They've been like really good. And because why? Well, if people use it and it blows up, people die. Yeah. So, they were pretty serious about this. Yeah. Then this thing went into software development, because that also sucks if this service doesn't work out for you anymore, and all your customers are affected. And I guess what we are heralding here is that the next level of evolution in this direction will be your revenue factory line, right? Which really needs that level of sophistication to it in order to make sure it runs as it should.
So, I did the intro. You do the outro. It's your turn. We have a strict schedule for this kind of stuff.
It's the outro.
And now the pressure is on you.
So wrapping up.
Yeah. Wrap it up. Take us home.
We talked about revenue leakage today. We went into the size of the problem. We went into if you really apply it, what are the ways you can what are the different options to fix some of that stuff, and then obviously we end up with the massive issue that is surrounding your revenue engine. Yeah. And I think every single person listening to this can probably now go off and be like, you know what? I know there's 15% minimum sitting out here.
Yeah, I'm gonna find it.
Let's fucking go.
Yeah,
you
I'm gonna
know?
find it. I mean, that's promotion right there. If you go to Yours Hero and it's like, hey, I've just found 15% of our time wasted in, this function. We can cut it like that. And I was like, okay, great. Let's go.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's gonna be. No, but no, this is the wrap for the session here, Mikkel.
Great.
So did you
Did
so
I
after the sandbag leaked,
Yeah.
is it still leaking or did you fix it or what did you do?
Yeah, turn it upside down again. The other
You
way.
know what?
The downside up. I don't know. Yeah, fixed it. It's there. I didn't clean up though.
Outro
Okay.
done.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony.
Sorry, Bart. Lots of stuff in post, I'm sure.
Oh.
Bye bye, Mikkel. Thanks everyone for watching, listening. Bye bye.
Bye.